Welcome back. Nigeria ranks 97 out of 133 with a score of 0.44 according to the scores and ranking of the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index from 2017 to 2018. The rule of law is the authority of influence and law in our society. Effective rule of law reduces corruption, combats poverty and disease, and protects people from injustice large and small. It is the foundation for communities of peace, opportunity, and equity. However, Amnesty International's recent report shows Nigeria is still battling with issues of armed conflict, internally displaced persons, arbitrary arrest and detentions, women's rights issues, unlawful killings, and lack of accountability, torture, and other ill treatment in society. The rule of law is not just the rule of lawyers and judges. All members of society are stakeholders. On today's program, we have...
Well, we have with us discussing the rule of law and human violations, Martin Obono, who is a lawyer and founder of TAP Initiative. Welcome to the Weekend Show.
Thank you very much.
We also have Dorothy Unjemanze, who's a filmmaker, a human rights activist, and an investigative journalism. Good to see you again, Dorothy.
Thank you for having me.
And my friend here, Jake Efodo Okechukwu, is an experienced human rights lawyer. He has worked with the police, he has worked with the judiciary, he has worked as a reporter. And so we are in a country where the police is meant to be our friends, but we're now scared of the police. We're meant to get solutions from the courts, but these judgments aren't being respected. And then we now hear of human rights violations. And so today with us in the studio, we have these guests to shed light and also seek solutions to how we can make the situation better. So welcome to the Weekend Show.
Thank you for having us.
So on the Weekend Show, we like to set the agenda. We like to talk issue-based discussions. So we recently heard about the arrest of about 70 women from a nightclub. The police rounded them up and, labeled them prostitutes. They took them to the station and they raped them with pure water sachets. This obviously through social media, GOG, and everyone was talking about accountability and the rule of law, the lack of rule of law in Nigeria. So I will start with you, Okechukwu. How do you respond to this? What needs to be done? What are the consequences of the actions of the police?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I think, when there's a critical security issue in a region and you declare state of emergency, I think this is a situation that calls for a specialized inquiry. I feel like everything needs to halt and pause. Everyone needs to be brought into account, including the police and the uniformed or security officials, both in Mufti and otherwise, as well as the people who are affected. I think we need to say, okay, you know what exactly is going on? Because it's not the first time, it's not the second or the 10th or 20th time. It's just that it keeps progressing incrementally. And like Andy said, the courts are not being obeyed. The security forces who are meant to protect us are not doing the same. So we need to sort of inquire what exactly is going on, who did what, where did the order come from, what is legal, what is moral, what is social, what is religious, to be able to tackle this issue now.
So we actually have a video of this incident I'm referring to. Let's take a look.
Oh, by the way, I heard that the same Utako police station that claimed that they did not know anything about this thing, that there were girls who needed to be paying, they were having sex with them in one batch at the back of Utako police station. So one of the girls here says that they were using pure water sachet as condom to have sex with them. Please, this is a basic, this is an extreme case of, I don't know what to call it, and this is in the federal capital of Nigeria. I'm begging everybody, I'm not begging only Nigerians, please help us and report this matter to the world. My vagina is not safe. The vagina of everybody in Abuja is not safe. On grounds of moral policing, they are targeting us and they are violating us. Last I checked, sexual activity should be between two consenting adults. My colleague, she's from the legal team. Yeah, so what kind of stories did you hear?
Lots of stories. There was the most striking one for me was a lady who has been menstruating since Friday. She actually had issues with the policemen because, or should I say those that were keeping her in custody, because she refused sexual advances. They told them to pay 5,000. If you pay 5,000, you would be let off, but she didn't have 5,000 to pay, and she had 3,000. They didn't accept to collect 3,000. So those who didn't have 5,000 could pay in kind. That's with sexual.
So those are being abducted in Abuja and they are being coerced to confess to different charges on grounds of moral policing. In fact, the worst of the things that happened was the representative of the social secretariat that was here at some point requested for everybody who came on grounds of human rights to this place and started telling us that it was the duty of the government to wade into this thing, that it was not right back on yeah, that it was not right for ladies to sell their bodies, and that we know that when children are good, it is the women's fault. When children are bad, it is the women's fault. And that for a lady who sells her body, what morals does she have to teach children? I asked her if she was aware that Nigeria had a court order, that there was a judgment, an existing court.
So we are like, what is happening? What is our crime? What do we do? They say when we get to where they're taking us to, we will know what our crime is. But after everything, what we saw that they took us to Osasu police station, where they put us inside cells. They beat us there, they pumped tear gas on us. Even they arrested a woman that has 2 months old baby. They even beat her up. The lady was crying. They naked her. They told the woman was.
Dorothy, can you elaborate more on the videos that we've just watched? Walk us through the story of these ladies and help us understand it better.
So the first video you saw was the second video I did on the day we finally found the ladies. After seeing we started the show by talking about 70 people in detention. Now the 70 people that were in detention are different from the over 30 people from an earlier raid that from Caramello, and we saw men bringing out females who consented to be naked within a building out to the streets naked and to the full glare of cameras. So they didn't consent to be naked on the streets. They didn't consent to be naked before camera. They didn't consent to be naked, or they didn't consent even to the people, the particular people, making contact with them. And so you see, okay, so we now eventually found these ladies, the 17, because I saw the tweets online. I saw Martin's tweets online, and I was worried because it was happening all over again. In 2012, I was a victim of these same things. In addition to being abducted from the streets, I was sexually harassed. They groped at my breast and everything, and it's unfair. There's a court judgment and all of it. Well, we eventually found the ladies, and how did we find them? We went to different facilities because I know all the detention camps. We went to the different facilities that we know of, and we didn't see them there. We went to this said Utako police station, and Utako police station told us they know nothing about any such people. We went to Social Development Secretariat. They said they didn't know anything about any such. But when they were eventually found in the AEPB Area 3 office, AEPB said they were only holding the people for Social Development Secretariat. So a lot was not adding up already. We went to then they were moved to a mobile court at the old parade ground in Area 10. On arriving at the place, we even before, from the Area 3, we tried to get the girls to have access to lawyers because we went with full legal team and they wouldn't allow us contact with them. And while we were at the old parade ground, by the time the courts, started sitting, the girls were to take pleas, guilty or not guilty. And the lawyers were there telling them you don't need to plead guilty if you're not guilty. And they all turned their faces away and all pled guilty. After which they came back and said the only reason they pled guilty was because they were told that they were going to be held for 6 months if they did not plead guilty. While that was happening, there was a lady who went for a birthday party. Her brother apparently had been at the same birthday party, and he started shouting, "Yeah, objection, my lord, objection. My sister is not guilty. My sister is being coerced." And she was, the court told him that a 13-year-old just appeared before the court and that nothing bad is happening here, the lady is old enough and can account for herself. He said no, that he wants his sister to have access to legal representation. He wants his sister to be properly briefed, and that wasn't permitted. Eventually, the sister was one of those who pled guilty, and they were all those who pled guilty, all but one pled guilty. Those who pled guilty were convicted to 1 year in prison, 1 month in prison, or a fine of 3,000 naira. They all paid this fine of 3,000 naira. And then we're still having issues with the one who did not plead guilty. Do you know that till now, as at now, we've processed, we've been able to shorty this lady. People presented their ID cards, filled out the forms and the rest of that. And up till now, there is no charge sheet. There is no charge sheet. A lot of shady things are happening. Human lives are being endangered. Nobody is giving us accounts. And when you talk, they try to shame you for daring to come and stand up for these people. I dare stand up for them because I know what it is like being in their situation. Up till now, I'm still struggling with life. I practically lost everything material. And people deserted me. A lot of people failed me. But now, since after the ECOWAS court ruling, a lot of people now have started coming back towards me and started seeing me, because a lot of people said my reputation was, you know, rubbing off negatively on them. But now the court has seen that of a truth, violations were happening. Of a truth, we were reporting these violations, and we were denied access to investigations, we were denied access to fair hearing, we were denied, of course, by not investigating, you're not bringing out everything. Unfortunately, the police is taking the fall for everything. The police is not the only...
Yeah, so this is something I actually want to talk about, Dorothy, and we're sorry you've had to go through this, and I also understand that even with the ECOWAS ruling, you were meant to be, there was meant to be some settlement which hasn't happened.
Nothing.
But beyond that, Martin, a lot of this got publicized because we saw a couple of your tweets, and so Nigeria is now becoming notorious for human rights violations. There are a couple of rulings, especially from the ECOWAS court, saying don't do this, and Nigeria will still do otherwise. Now, it almost seems like this is a syndicate of sorts, because the penalty for this is either 6 months imprisonment or 5,000 naira. I'm surprised there's now the option of 3,000 naira. And so it's almost like a revenue generating scheme. And there's also the rehabilitation part where people are paid to rehabilitate these people. But what's the legal angle on this, especially based on the fact that you have been involved in this directly? What's the legal position on this?
Thank you. Basically, I have looked through the two codes, essentially the Constitution, and the Constitution is not just silent about the issue of prostitution. The Constitution has nothing to say about prostitution. I have looked through the Criminal Code, which governs criminal activities or regulations in the South, and the only thing I have seen that is close to that, so anything called prostitution, is procuration. So you procure somebody as a sex slave or to carry out sexual activities for you so you can earn money. Pimping and brothels. Now, in the penal code, the criminal code, that's in section 222 to 225. Then in the section 201 of the penal code, which I've also combed carefully, has only one section, 201, which also talks about brothels. So I don't know where or which of the laws, that's particularly criminalizing people standing outside or walking on the street and says people should dress in a certain particular way or format, and that if you are like this, that means you're tagged a prostitute. So it behoves on all of us to begin to ask the authorities certain questions as to why are you harassing young women? Okay, let's take, for instance, prostitution is a crime, for example. If prostitution is a crime, it takes two to tango. You have a man, you have a woman. And in fact, there are even male prostitutes. So why are you targeting only women? And why are you molesting these women? If you say you want to rehabilitate, you're taking them in because you want to rehabilitate them in your facilities. Why has your facilities turned to a sexual assault facilities where people are being endangered and lives are being threatened? So these are the questions that we need to ask, and I still am asking, can anyone show me a law that shows that prescribes penalty for prostitution in Nigeria? Nobody seems to have it.
Jake, you look like you have something to say on this issue.
I mean, Martins is making a very valid point. I think it's not really about sex work, and I like to use sex work because it's that's what it is. This is not a conversation about sex work at all.
Yeah.
This is what the other side would say. Oh well, we're trying to reduce sex work, but that's like you said, their parties. This is about the abduction of women
Yes.
by men who we don't know,
Yes.
in uniforms and otherwise, from the street. Most of these women, more than 90% of them, are in no way engaging in sex work. People are going to buy a recharge card. People are just eating shawarma with their friend and they're dragging their hand
Someone was
away.
pulled away from her husband.
And they're asking for rings. Can we see rings, right? So this is about the criminalization of women, but more importantly, about poor and vulnerable women. Because if it's about sex work, we know sex work is not just people who stand on the road. People who stand on the road who do sex work are economically disadvantaged and underprivileged. So this is about poor, vulnerable women who may or may not be sex workers. But the question is about what is making these men to grapple or take these women off. And I remember something happened in Wuse too, right where we're buying shawarma, and I saw the same thing happening, and we stood in front. I said, we will not let this happen. We stood there and said, no, this cannot go on in Federal Capital Territory, where sex work is not even a crime in any way. So when I see tweets about police officers saying, religion does not prohibit this is not immoral, let's not call it prostitution, it's about sex work. For me, it's not just about the law on how this is very illegal. It's about how these men or forces who are meant to protect us are doing otherwise. But it's about how this undermines our common human civilization. I think Nigeria is like at the very bottom of human rights, and we're beginning to dig. It's even the animal kingdom don't do this. They don't pack themselves and just take money, and if you don't have money...
Jake, you raise a very salient point. It's about the rule of law. We're not even talking about the issue of whether sex work is good or not. We're not talking about the ethics or the morals of the situation. We're talking about the rule of law, the way we treat our fellow human beings within the confines of the law. So let's talk solutions here, Dorothy. What is the solution to a situation like this?
Solutions. Accountability. Over the years, these violations have been happening. People's family members are still missing. Martins was on ground at this place, and he can confirm that there were up to 70 people. At the moment, Utako Police Station, Utako Police Station, okay. They say it's a holding facility. I didn't know that there was something behind the Utako Police Station. Some ladies reported that there was something behind the Utako Police Station where people were being taken. Martins confirmed that independently, different times, right? Now the police is alleging that it is only 39 people that were brought to their facility. That is over 40 people unaccounted for. What is the process? You can't tell me you're doing an arrest when you cannot you can't account for the person you arrested. What is the process of arrest? The people who were taken away, some of their property is missing. How do you document them? What are the conditions for release? Like he said, it's only fair to open an inquiry. Can the police give us full details of the people who they received? Let us have their contacts. Let the Human Rights Commission come and facilitate an inquiry into this, so that with the presence of the Human Rights Commission and some of us who are willing to, be part of this inquiry, maybe more victims would be willing to talk. Do you know that one person who was a victim of this came into Abuja for an interview in my office? I didn't know. It was much later somebody who reached out to her and said, why didn't you turn up? She says, she was one of the people in detention over the weekend. And then there's an ECOWAS court judgment. If we can start from there. The ECOWAS, in the judgment, it is clear that a woman outside her house does not qualify her, is not enough reason to label her prostitutes. And then if you're dealing with prostitution, then it's a transaction. And for there to be proof of a transaction, there needs to be two people. And then we also have situations where, of course, it's only women that are targeted. The bouncers of Beer Band were made to plead guilty to obstructing duty.
Okay, but
and they've been convicted.
So you said accountability.
Yes.
How do we hold these people accountable? Solution.
We want them to publicly declare everything that has happened, all the records of all the abductions, everything, all their rehabilitations. They should publicly declare all of that, starting from 2011 till date. at
So
least
that's
I have a lot of.
Yeah, so that's a reactive solution. What's a proactive solution to take to an issue like this?
Like she rightly said, there should be a form of accountability, not just a form of accountability, but all in terms of record keeping, but also in terms of due process. So, for example, people who have been arrested, people don't even know the charges preferred against them. So they're just brought into a kangaroo court and they're asked, guilty or not guilty? Oh, I'm guilty. Okay, 1 month's imprisonment or you fine of this. We need to know what the charges are. So openness, right? Transparency. Let us know the facilities that these people are being taken to. How many are they? Who has done what? Because at the end of the day, these are human lives, and it could have been anybody. In fact, a friend of mine, who is also a celebrity, when she saw my tweet, she said to me, we were 4 of us in a car, and they were going to celebrate one of their sisters who just graduated, and the police came to them and said to them, oh, you guys are prostitutes, where are you going to? Where are you going to with all these girls and all that? And they almost, but because they had someone to call, they were let go.
I totally agree with you. Transparency, accountability. Jake, I'll give you the final word on this. What is a preventive solution to an issue like this? So before we even round up girls, before the police can stop a woman like you or I from, walking on the street or entering a club, telling us that, oh, we're not with a man, therefore we can't enter, we shouldn't be there. How do we prevent a situation like that from happening? Yes, we know we live in a patriarchal society, but how do we change the mindset of these law enforcement officers to prevent situations like this from happening in the first place?
I think I would say 4 things. I think first is already happening. So we have to prevent it, but we have to deal with it as it's increasing. The first thing is we need to checkmate the abuse of power. People who are security forces or police officers or AAPB or whatever, some don't have the mandate to be able to touch human beings and take them, but they do it. But their power comes from some authority, which we must find out who made what, who sent you, who gave order, where was a warrant or a license that gave you the permission to come and take all of us. That abuse of power must be checkmated. The second point I'd like to make is about social re-education. I feel that we have been going backwards. We need to, relearn and unlearn some of these patriarchal stereotypes that we carry. Man supposed to, woman supposed to, religion said, religion did not say. The third part is about moving the conversation to action. So thank God both of you are on social media, you tweet and everything, but we need to see this in person. Not just about protests, but can we actually implement some of these things? And I think the fourth part is about reparations. We need to be victim oriented. How can these girls and women continue to live their lives in a way that they don't feel shamed, in a way that they get justice, not just in terms of money, but that they've heard, that they've been heard. So we need to set up like a truth and reconciliation commission of some sort, and ensure that people can speak about this. It's okay for the police to apologize and say, we're so sorry. It's okay for Yomi Shogunle to go on Twitter and say, I'm sorry for my tweet. I hereby take it back. I'm learning as well, because patriarchy affects men and women. So apologies need to be made. Monies need to be paid. And to prevent these things, we need to make sure we don't let the same things happen. If people have to go to prison, they have to go. If people have to apologize, they have to apologize. But the steps are many, but we have to take them right here and right now.
And government has to respect court orders, because if the government doesn't respect certain court orders, how do you expect the police, how do you expect all these task forces to respect court orders? So it's top to bottom. And everybody must be held accountable.
And not just the court orders. I mean, we have our constitution, section 33 to 44 provides the guarantees are fundamental human rights. But Nigeria is signatory to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. We're signatory to the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. We're signatory to the African Protocol to protect women, the Maputo Protocol. We signed it. Our signature was the first on that document. We're signatory to the Convention for the Elimination of Torture, Convention to the Elimination of discrimination against women.
So we definitely need to stop paying lip service and actually put these signatories to action. Jake, Dorothy, Martins, thank you so much for your time. Never enough time to discuss these issues. But please continue with the discussions on our social media handles at Weekend Show NG on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Sports segment is up next. Don't go anywhere.